Hello AP Biology students, let's go over the third section of Unit 2. In this section, we're covering something called the endomembrane system. The endomembrane system refers to the complex membrane-bound organelles we find in eukaryotic cells. So each of the following organelles I'm going to talk about in this section have their own membrane. In regular biology, we learn about all of these organelles and how they function independently, but in AP Biology, we're going to learn how all of these organelles work together. First, let's go over the endoplasmic reticulum, otherwise known as the ER. This is a complicated structure of membrane channels. They're going to be connected physically near the nucleus. You can see our nucleus here, and we have two different types. We have smooth ER and we have rough ER. Typically, the rough ER is going to be located closer to the nucleus, while the smooth ER is going to be located a little bit further away. But it's going to be really important to remember that the smooth and rough ER are both connected through their membrane channels. And yes, whenever scientists were first observing the cell's organelles, they literally said, hey, that one looks rough and that one doesn't, so we're going to call it rough and smooth. They didn't know that the rough ER had ribosomes attached to it. The rough ER, again, is made of a membrane that's going to have ribosomes attached, and it's going to produce proteins that they're going to later fold in their lumen and then send to the smooth ER for later transport to the Golgi body. It's really important to remember that typically the proteins that are produced in the rough ER are going to be extracellular proteins or membrane-bound proteins. This just means that these proteins are either going to end up in the cell's outer membrane or outside of the cell. Now, the smooth ER is again going to be connected to the rough ER, and it's not going to have any ribosomes attached. At the smooth ER, we're going to see productions of lipids, the breaking down of certain molecules, and then finally they're going to excrete and send off the vesicles out here in the outermost portion of the smooth ER. Now, whenever the proteins and other molecules leave the smooth ER, they're going to leave in these things called vesicles. And these vesicles, all they are membrane-bound organelles that contain matter. I always like to think of these as the UPS truck of the cell. So again, you can see that this organelle has its own membrane, and its contents here is going to be transported from the smooth ER to the Golgi body. The Golgi body is a stack of flattened vesicles known as saccules. You can see that these are the membrane-bound, kind of just flattened vesicles that are going to make up the Golgi body or Golgi apparatus. And their function is going to be to receive these filled vesicles from the ER, modify them, and ship them around the cell. Whenever I refer to extracellular proteins, I'm talking about proteins that are going to be pushed out of the cell. Extra meaning outside, then cell, obviously the cell. So we're talking about proteins that are being pushed out, or their end goal is to be located outside of the cell. So again, we have our rough ER producing proteins that are going to be transported through these things called vesicles. These vesicles are either going to go to the Golgi body, or they're going to have a straight route that they're going to go to the membrane. Now, some of these proteins are going to end up in the membrane here of the cell, but others are just going to be pushed outside of the cell. Here's another great diagram to see this process, where we're going from the rough ER making proteins. They're going to be sent through these transport vesicles to the Golgi body. At the Golgi body, they're going to be packaged, they're going to be tagged for different locations, and they're going to be sent to a bunch of different locations within and outside the cell. Some are going to go to something we're going to learn later about. This is called a lysosome, and others are going to be sent to the cell membrane. Sometimes these proteins are going to stay in the cell membrane, and sometimes they're going to be exported out of the cell. This meme is probably one of my most used meme formats. I just think it's really good and really funny. Proteins made in the rough ER, yeah, they're going to be transported through the vesicles to the Golgi body.